Combo kills that Modern's used to, but featuring a lot more interaction thanks to the blue cards than the combo decks of Modern of old.
What do you think Pikachu named with Cavern of Souls?
If I had to guess, and this is a wild guess, I'm going to go Merfolk. You could name Wizard. I don't think it's that good.
Expert analysis that we have you in the booth for today. Thank you, Drake. As we are going to see a little suspension here from Matthew after the dockhand from Nikachu.
Yeah, I mean, great start for Hoey. From what I've seen of the Belcher deck so far, I mean, it's not a deck that's been around a super long time, but it is a known quantity really at this point. The best hands, in my opinion, start with Lotus Bloom. So I think this is really where Matt wants to start, especially in a matchup like this, where it's really just kind of going to be a race to the finish line. You know, different goals. One player beating down the other player, of course, trying to assemble a combo, aka Belcher and Activate. It's a race to the finish line with a little bit of interaction backed up. Excuse me. Lotus Bloom does a lot of that for Matt Hoey.
Yeah, as we're going to see the backside of Glass Bull Mimic for Nikachu here. And we're just going to tap down Matthew's land.
An exchange is normally pretty good for Jonathan, especially if he needs to develop his mana. But when you have two Lotus Blooms on suspend, using your dockhand to tap lands is not really where you want to be, because there is a huge burst of mana that is coming for Hoey as soon as he needs it, and the dockhand's just not really good at checking that.
Yeah. Now we do see a Shauna's Tidebinder in hand for Nikachu, as well as a Force of Negation. Looks like a land and something else. I think maybe one of the lords. How important do you think that Tidebinder could end up being in this matchup?
I mean, Tidebinder obviously is one of your ace in the hole. So you actually have Tidebinder with Force backup, which is why Jonathan's playing it slow here. And obviously here comes, I actually don't know what that is, but either way, like I said, just having this interaction is going to be a big part of what Jonathan is actually going to do, because he doesn't have an aggressive start. So we talked about a race to the finish line. Well, Jonathan already knows he's going to lose that race. So now it becomes time to pivot. You need to pivot into, all right, I need enough interaction to where it's going to take Hoey a long time to rebuild. I can stop what he has going on and then, just kind of win the game with the Moby beatdowns I've assembled so far. So already pivoting away from kind of the Lord heavy aggro beatdown you can kind of expect when you think of Merfolk, you think of Lord of Atlantis, you think of all these things. That's not what this game's going to be about from Nikachu's side of the table.
Is that a Thundertrap trainer for Hoey that he played last turn?
I would imagine so. I guess I don't recognize the art on that.
I think it is, because I think I can see the offspring
text. Well, that works for me. Yeah. I mean, a huge pickup. Obviously we play the 4 Philology Archaeologists and 4 Thundertrap Trainers. So that's really one of the big pickups for the Belcher deck, and kind of how it seems like it kind of came out of nowhere. You now have this Augur of Bolas style effect, a card that has a lot of pedigree from back in the day, now finding its role, but able to find Goblin Charbelchers and Lotus Blooms and things of that nature, which is a big change for this deck, and really what kind of put it on the map alongside all the lands that you get to play now with Sink into Stupor and the like. MH3, Bloomburrow, both huge sets for this mono blue Belcher deck.
Yeah, and with one of these Lotus Blooms coming down, is Matt Hoey at a point where any turn could really be the turn that he closes the game out?
Yeah, it's interesting here, right? Because you have the Lotus Bloom, you have it in play, and you're not under that much pressure. I think that's part of where you see Jonathan pulling the trigger on the subtlety now for no value or anything. Obviously it's not that bad to tag things like Thundertrap Trainers, Philology Archaeologists, things like that. You really just need to get pressure going, because as it stands, Hoey can just play these Lotus Blooms, sit on them. There's no pressure. You don't need to actually get the game over with. And Hoey can start to work through some of this interaction, line his cards up well, and really go for it when he feels the most confident that it's going to work. And so really now the onus is on Nikachu, now that he's presented a threatening enough amount of interaction that Hoey doesn't want to jam. The pressure's on Nikachu to close the gap before really Hoey can overpower it with the interaction he has available in his deck.
Yeah, and Harbinger of the Seas there for for Nikachu.
Not great against the mono blue deck.
Not super useful.
Does attack and block. Not also what this matchup's about, but I guess notably it does give Island Walk, right? Like that could come up. But Svelion a much better play. But it's not completely textless, but it doesn't do the mana disruption style effect that the Blood Moon, Harbinger of the Seas, those kinds of things you're used to seeing in Modern.
Yeah, Harbinger of the Seas, great card to pitch to force the negation right now.
True. Definitely part of Nikachu's plan, I think. Seems patient, seems calm. Lengths and beatdown. Almost half dead is Hoey, who thankfully for him hasn't really had to shock his super shock his lands in, take that 3 damage. That's going to matter a lot in this matchup too. A lot of times you take up to 6 damage really in over the course of some turns if you want to play some stuff. That's pretty painful. That's a lot of damage just to give your aggro opponent for free. Hasn't really had to do that this game, and that's really nice. That's part of maybe the weakness of Nikachu's hand here. That's a little bit more interactive.
Yeah, we're gonna see a Master of the Pearl Trident come down.
A lot of pressure out of nowhere.
A lot of pressure out of nowhere.
Yeah. Again, things are not unblockable. Hoey does not have islands yet, but of course, Harbinger of the Seas would make that true next turn. And I have to imagine now this is exactly how Nikachu wanted to set it up. Hoey can live through this turn. I'm pretty confident. The question is, and this is what Hoey's thinking about right now, can he get 2 turns? Does he have to go next turn? Can he even go next turn? I don't even know. I don't see any artifacts in his hands. So we'd have to do something like a Word of Invention, whatever, to find the Belcher to begin with. And yeah, so here's Hydroelectric Specimen. I guess he's trying to set up, basically he wants to get 2 turns, at least. He does not want to have to go for it next turn because he does not feel confident about the ability to go for it next turn.
Yeah, and we're going to see Nikachu pick up a Glasspool Mimic into hand there.
Svelion the draw. So get some draw power going. I mean, things have turned very quickly for Nikachu. His draw steps have been very kind to follow up his early interactive presentation. Now having some aggro beatdowns and Hoey under a lot of pressure. And it looks like go time to me. That's a big word.
Yeah. I think he took, 6 damage that turn?
I believe that's correct. And importantly, and this is something I want to highlight, is the power of this deck. He managed to enable blocks to where he not only lived, but was able to keep a blue creature around for the Flare of Denial. And that came up big there. Now he had an extra piece of counter magic for the Force of Negation that came down from Nikachu, and that was key. I mean, that was key here. And it looks like this Belcher is being activated. That's going to deal just buku damage. And Nikachu, as he looks through the deck that is open deck list here for this Belcher deck, he's going to get a look through, just a quick perusal. And yeah, that's going to be the end of game number 1. Hoey did a great job navigating his position. Again, 2 Lotus Blooms, I think, are some of the most important pieces of that game for Hoey and his success. The dockhand, the tapping, all that kind of pressure that Nikachu had was really kind of just overwritten by having access to that burst mana from Lotus Bloom. But there was some considerations to that into the game blocking there for Hoey as well. Able to set up a Flare Denial backup. Was able to do exactly what he's trying to do. Have just enough counter magic to punch through the Belcher and win game number 1 here over Nikachu, and what was kind of a textbook execution.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, very well played by both players. Getting, I feel like Nikachu did everything he could there, right? Got the pressure, had the force backup, did everything he could, but ultimately Hoey had just set up his turn to win in such a way that he was gonna win. I think
he's going to need more. Yeah, we're going to have to take a look here at the sideboard. He needs help, as that game 1 did not look good for him. As we do get a look at the sideboard, notable thing to pick out here before I really dive into the sideboard is the 3 Hex Catchers started in the board. That was not true of the Merfolk decks he was playing in the NRG series events, so clearly thought those were a little bit weaker. Chose to move those to sideboard alongside 4 copies of Consigned to Memory, a Dismember, 3 Flare of Denials of his own, another Harbinger of the Seas, 2 Skirn Scolding, and 1 Unable to Scream. I have to imagine we're going to make a lot of adjustments here, especially around the creature removal side of things being out of the deck. And cards like Voldalian Hexcatcher, a card that I'm very interested to see in the sideboard, seems great in this matchup. Now probably needs to come in. Being both pressure and disruption seems like the mix you want.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of options here for Nikachu. I mean, 4 copies of Consigned to Memory in the sideboard is pretty interesting.
And you probably want flares too. This is a lot, right? We're talking about 4
Yeah, I
Consigned
mean,
Memories, 3
we might
flares
be
and Isles,
seeing him
3
bring
tech
in
catchers.
like 10 cards.
Yeah, I was about to say Stern Scoldings aren't zeros, but I just don't know that you have enough cuts. Maybe
No,
maybe no. That's a lot of ends. You're bringing,
You're bringing
so
so
many
much
cards
in already.
And I do want to highlight, before we do take a quick look at Hoey's deck, I want to highlight Consigned to Memory. When we saw Grayson Nemitz qualify for championship on his copy of Belcher in the finals against Demir Murktide, Consigned to Memory actually didn't look that good. Tamashi was actually the game winner, and there, Stern Scolding actually would have worked in a spot where Consigned to Memory didn't, because, they have ways of just cheating Belcher into play with Word of Invention and stuff like that. The Consigned doesn't hit. I think it's interesting to think about, maybe you want to split those numbers between Consigned to Memory and Stern Scolding, because sometimes one works, sometimes the other works, and it's not always the same. I wanted to highlight that very quickly. Now let's take a quick look. Matt Hoey's mono blue Belcher deck. Very different, same color, very different options here for him, as we do see still 4 Consigned to Memory, still 2 Harbinger of the Seas, but we have Commandeer into the Flood Maw, 2 Mystical Disputes, 2 Spell Snares, and 3 copies of Unable to Scream available for Belcher. Not less heavy adjustments for sure for this deck. I think maybe you want like some amount of the Spell Snares, maybe you want some amount of the Mystical Disputes, just like a little bit of extra interaction to complement what you have going on already in the main deck game. But I don't know, looks like it worked great to me in game 1. Don't want to make heavy changes and dilute your deck with nonsense that doesn't work. And I actually think Tamashi is kind of one of those cards that you maybe take in or out a bunch depending on how your opponent's looking to attack you. I think it looks pretty good in this matchup. Blocks and can get around, can kind of recover from some counter spell fights.
This deck list is so satisfying to look at. I was talking last match about, 6 piles of 4 cards I like. What about 15 piles of 4 cards that I like?
Love it. Used to call it quad laser. Play the good cards. I like it. Well, okay, so we got 3. We do have a split. We have 3 Pact of Negation, 1 Commandeer. So we've ruined everything.
Commandeer is very visually upsetting.
Yeah, just get that out of here. Just throw that. Get a 4th Pact in here. I don't care what's correct. Just get it out of the deck. Yeah, awesome. I love this. Just like find the best cards, play them. And to me, when I'm looking at deck lists and I'm looking like, okay, what do I want to play in a format? Anything that is this confident, any deck list that just from paper is this confident in the cards it wants to play, that's appealing to me. That means you know what's good, and there's not much that I'm going to have to figure out as far as numbers go. I can pick up, I can play, I can be successful. And Hoey, someone that we saw do just that on the NRG series. 1 and done. He's been a mainstay of the series. I'm not confident in this. I think he's played every championship and might be the only player to do so. Wow. I'd have to go back and check that, but he's been around for longer than I've even been in the booth here for NRG series. So that's longer than 4 years. I think it's closer to like 8. I know we a mainstay of the NRG series and got it done in 1 this season. Said he wasn't going to play too many events. He was, I don't know. I'm kind of, beginning to play less events, yada, yada. Got it done in 1. Okay, I'm getting an update. He did miss 1 champs. So still, just an absurd resume. Hoey, easily one of the best players in the field every time you show up to champs. And that's going to be certainly true here as well. Did start with a loss, but up a game here. Taking a look at a hand he's thinking very hard about.
Yeah, it looks like we're going to see that Cavern on 1 again. Drake, expert analysis. What do you think it was this time?
I think you got to go Merfolk here, Niall. I think that's the only type that allows you to cast this Rishon on Dockhand. So by process of deduction, he did in fact name Merfolk.
Yeah. All right, well, back over to Nikachu. Looks like we did bring in at least 1 Consigned to Memory, as we're seeing that as the pickup for the turn here, and seeing a lot of spells in his hand.
This is a tough spot. A lot of spells, not a lot of lands.
Not a lot of lands. We might need to be playing the backside of that Glasspool Mimic again. As of right now, we don't have a way to use things like this counter spell. Although we do have the Hex Catcher, it looks like.
I think there was some consideration to how game 1 played out. It's a lot more appealing to start tapping lands with Dockhand when there's no Lotus Blooms on suspend. That shuts off things like the Falaji Archaeologist, Thundertrap Trainer stuff that can come down this turn if you do some of that tapping action versus developing your board. When you don't have very many lands in hand, you have a bunch of spells, you have a lot of pressure to just get the spells out of your hand. And I think that's why we saw the quick attack. And then really the only thought I think Jonathan really had was whether to play the tap land now and deploy another 1-drop or to start deploying 2-drops. And that was really, kind of his focus. And now kind of has a little bit of the same question. How much, do we start tapping now now that we can deploy a 2-drop, hold up the dockhand, and still be attacking, how do you split up your attack and disruption in order to be successful?
Yeah, so we're gonna see Lord of Atlantis as the play here.
Uncounterable, which actually does come up in this deck. We kind of laugh at Cavern a lot of the time. It's like, oh, you're playing against a mono red deck and your thing's uncounterable. Nice. And this deck, it matters a ton. There's definitely times where Hoey would want to counter this and cannot because of Cavern.
And Nietzsche so far doing a very good job of assembling a pretty threatening board, as we're going to see a Lotus Bloom get on suspend here for Hoey.
I like how Hoey's sequenced his lands. Last turn he could have, I think, played his Seagate Restoration untapped and maybe started to get some stuff done and chose not to. I think that's very heads up. I see a lot of spells in his hand, but of course his entire deck spells. Beyond that, I think really prioritizing trying to do that as little as possible is what this is about. So as soon as you see Hoey very deliberately choose to pay 3 life to get a land in untapped, that means he intends to cast something. You just cannot afford to be doing this willy-nilly, even to bluff. So if you're Nikachu now, when he does that, you're saying, okay, he has a spell to cast. Now, what is it? Is it Flare of Denial? That one's not great against Cavern. But if it's Sink into Stupor, that one has quite a bit of text.
Yeah, very, very interesting, as we're going to see a swing out here.
I like attacks first.
For what, 6 damage?
2, 4, 6. That's the math I got, which is half his life total. It's a 2-turn clock here. And I think there's a Hex Catcher for Nikachu too. This is very different from game 1. The Lotus Bloom very late to the party. All this disruption really still works in the sense that he has consigned memory, he has stuff that works, but he has a real clock. And this is the mixture I really want to see in this matchup for Nikachu to be successful. A lot of pickups from the sideboard helps with that. And here comes Whir of Invention to try to find Lotus Bloom. Can't really let that one happen, I don't think.
Yeah, as we are playing the Hex Catcher, which is going to resolve. We'll sacrifice
the
the throw a fish into the spell.
Yeah. I like that flavor. You just take one of your fish and throw it at the spell and it stops working. If it's really expensive, so you just throw more fish at it. There you go. Yeah. Kind of a goblin bombardment effect, but for Merfolk.
Yes. As seeing how we look through his hand, is there really anything how he could do here that would stabilize enough?
Well, based on the shake of the head and the explicative I just saw mouthed, I'm not led to believe the answer is yes to that question. Hoey, showing quite a bit there. And I think we're not just a turn too slow. I think we're like 2 turns too slow here. The mixture, that being able to disrupt that Whir of Invention and maintain so much pressure is so good for Nikachu. And this is really, honestly, the power of Merfolk. You talk about these mono blue aggro decks. Usually when you talk about any mono blue aggro deck, you're talking about pretty quick clock backed up by a lot of disruption. And that's really the mixture you always want to see. The times your deck fails is when you don't see that. When here we go. This is a sign of desperation for sure. And really, like I said, this is the mixture you want to see from Nikachu. He's done a very good job with this game.
Yeah, and we do see a Tijana's Tidebinder in hand for Nikachu, which should give him a lot of protection against what Hoey is going to do. He has an uncounterable Tidebinder just sitting in hand.
And like I said, it looked like he was going to be 2 turns too slow. So this Bayin Veil that was cast by Hoey and for a fog effect is like not actually enough on its own. It's just 1 extra turn where you really think that Hoey needs 2 for that Lotus Bloom to come off suspend. And so he's fine. He's like, okay, sure. Thumbs up. You still got to find something to do next turn. Hoey didn't. Nikachu's going to win game 2. So a game 3 we get, and a lot of here we go. Having to flip all your cards, a miserable part of this deck, I think, is having to flip it all back. That would drive me crazy too. I can't leave it on the land side. Get out of here. These are spells. Really kind of the classic upgrades from sideboard that we wanted to see. Hex Catcher came in big when it needed to. Obviously consigned to memory provided necessary coverage. So the adjustments that Nikachu got out of the sideboard that we talked about, heavy adjustments, had 10 cards to work with, really came in big. And Hoey, we saw not a lot of adjustments he really even could make. So game 2, harder. Game 3, gonna be hard as well, but you're on the play. That's gonna be a big upgrade.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the play draw dynamic in this matchup, because clearly, Nikachu on the play that game clearly mattered quite a bit, able to get his aggression out early and really start clocking Hoey. But how important is it for Hoey to be on the play?
I mean, you talk a little bit about the contrast of the Magic we're seeing this round versus last round. Last round mattered almost none, right? You really almost sometimes you take the draw. There's arguments for it where you're up a card, you can hit land drops more often, et cetera, et cetera. In this matchup, the play draw is so much more important. Both of these decks really looking to just kind of they have the ability to win the game turn 4, and maybe even faster in certain hands. I'm not totally confident on that, but the crux of it is you're able to win the game very quickly, and so you want to be the first person getting to turn 4. You want to take your turn 4 first. That way you have the potential to just slam the door on the game before your opponent even has a chance to do anything. And so play draw is going to matter a ton, obviously. That's going to be true of aggro decks at large. It's true of combo decks at large, and generally for this reason. They're looking to get the game over with as quickly as possible, whereas some other fair stuff like the Azorius control decks you saw from other players, that's not true. So play draw going to come up a lot bigger, and really you can only talk about it so much because there's only so much you could do about it from a player perspective. It's like you're either on the play or you're not. That's really how things go. You can make some adjustments and cut lands. Sometimes you'll see players cut lands on the draw, like those kinds of things in the sideboard. These decks, I think it's just literally about whoever's on the play is favored to win the match. We'll see if that ends up holding true as Hoey does start things off.
Yeah, and we're seeing a really strong start for Hoey here with the turn 1 Lotus Bloom. It looks
What
like
you want
we're
to see.
shocking lands in twice in a row to get this archaeologist into play.
Yeah. So we got Lotus Bloom in on 1, and then we got Archaeologist on 2. I mean, this is really one of your best sequences, and this can find anything. It looks like it found 2 copies of Belcher and a Whir of Invention. Have to imagine we want Belcher. We already have a Lotus Bloom, which is what the Whir represents. So I do like finding a Belcher here. Kind of face up, but whatever. I mean, what you're doing is face up.
Right. Also worth noting, Nikachu started with the tap land there and played his cavern this turn. Had untapped sources, but I suppose just no 1-drops. As back to Hoey, we're going to play another archaeologist.
This whole thing has been a loud signal to Hoey. As soon as you start on tap land, that means no pressure. And your turn 2 is a Lord, typically the thing you want to play last, this Master of the Pearl Trident. If you're Hoey, that should signal loud alarm bells. There is a lot of free interaction on the other side of the table. There's no pressure at all. And what you're seeing here aren't disruptive creatures. So there is just going to be a ton of counter magic. And if you're just tapping out willy-nilly, a lot of it's going to be free. And I think that's going to be true for what Nikachu has going on. And I think if you're Hoey, that's something you can actually just assume to be true, as a 2-2 is not going to manage to get through an 0-3. It's a lot of work to do for Nikachu.
Yeah, absolutely. As we are going to see the Side Bloom come down, and the Lotus Bloom is going to come off suspend for Hoey, back on his turn.
Another spot where Hoey doesn't need to crack it this turn. He's not under no pressure. He's just 2 0-3s versus a 2-2 and now a 3-4. He has a long time as it stands right now and has time to set up for a big fight.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to see. I mean, as you're talking about, Nikachu does have quite a bit of free interaction. We saw the 2 Force of Negations in hand there. But Hoey, I mean, we see the Mystical Dispute. We know about, a couple of cards from the Archaeologist.
Maybe I'm a little too, I don't know, addicted to the silence effects, especially after last match where we saw them be so impressive. But kind of surprised in a deck with 4 copies of Whir of Invention and all these, various creatures that can find it, not to see like a singleton copy of Defense Grid or whatever in the sideboard for spots like this, where you could just like wait if you want. Now, obviously, Hoey feels very confident, so maybe you just never need it, as here goes a backup to cast the Force. Yeah, as we're going to start a big fight here, I'm just kind of surprised not to see any kind of artifacts you could find to help fight through a lot of this without having to commit a bunch of cards.
Yeah, as we're going to see the Mystical Dispute come down on this Force. Nikachu does have the option to force this, which looks like he is going to do, pitching another Master of the Pearl Trident.
Yeah, I don't... this pact is kind of tough Because what can happen here? So he's thinking about pacting, right? Which would make the Belcher work. And then on your next turn, you can activate the Belcher with your 3 lands before you have to pay for the trigger. But Nikachu's leftovers a sink into Stupor. So you can just bounce the Belcher and he dies to the trigger.
Very interesting.
Oh no. And I think that's exactly what's going to happen here. Nikachu looks calm, cool, and collected. Now the beatdowns don't matter. Your opponent has a trigger to pay for that they currently cannot. Uh-oh.
As we're gonna see the attack here.
Yeah, a formality.
Draw a card, a consign to memory.
Take 3 points, please. All right, I think you do have to bounce main phase. So we're gonna have to do that before we pass on over. No way to do it around dispute, which I think is what Nikachu's thinking about right now. Yeah, the consign. Okay, I was also checking to make sure the consign doesn't work against it. Yeah, I believe it is as simple as bounce the Belcher to opponent's hand. They die to trigger, win the game. I don't know. I don't know if this is posturing as we get a look into Sink into Stupor. I believe I saw one in his hand. And that'll bounce Belcher back. There you go. Return target non-land permanent. I want to choose that mode. You can't pass though. Oh no! Oh no!
It's tough.
Consign. That gets an activated ability. Oh no! And so there's the Sink into Stupor. Am I missing something? Could he have countered it? Could he not have cast it? I thought I saw an island too. Whatever. Either way, it looks like Hoey's going to get to activate his Belcher, and he's going to win 2-1 over Nikachu in his take on Merfolk. Whatever happened. It looks like they were talking about the Sink the Stupor, so there must be something I was missing. But Goblin Char Belcher going to win the match over Merfolk. Kind of surprised. I have to feel like Hoey got away with one there. I mean, it looked like Nikachu's hand was really good. Double force, a little bit of pressure, but again, you really need more pressure than just turn 2 Master of the Pearl Trident there in game number 3 in order to punch your way through. You just need more. And that's the fail rate of Merfolk. The fail rate of Merfolk is when you don't have the ability to get early pressure backed up by the interaction. So it looks like, so we're actually going to get a chance to talk to Nikachu and maybe see what's kind of what happened there at the end, kind of his thoughts on the matchup at large and what's going on there. And that's going to be exciting, talking to the Merfolk Basher about his take on Merfolk. Now 1-1, very much still in the event. And, obviously both of those players now 1-1. Remember, 8 wins does punch your ticket to top 8, 6 losses punches your ticket home. And each match still worth money too, even if you do kind of don't do well in the tournament. Each match you're playing for $50 alongside the minimum payout of $400. So a lot on the line for all these players as we continue through. And 1-1, I mean, you can still win the tournament. Losses, it's not like Swiss where you start to accumulate a bunch of losses. You're like, oh dang, like I'm not gonna make top 8. I'm not gonna make it. As long as you're still in the tournament, you can win the tournament. And that's true of both of the players we just watched. I think we're gonna get a chance.
And I mean, especially if it's a situation where, maybe Modern is just your weaker format. Right? Like maybe you just go into this event knowing like, okay, if I get 1 or 2 wins in Modern, I'm going to be thrilled, but I'm really going to crush Pioneer and I'm really going to crush Standard. Like it's really a totally different sort of mental dynamic than what I think you're usually in these sort of events.
Yeah, definitely. And especially like you just keyed on, your confidence in your deck is also going to affect how you play. If you just don't feel based on, oh, dang, you see the metagame reveal, bunch of brute skill, dang, I don't have a good brute skill matchup. Like you kind of enter that like, all right, I'm just going to rely on the other formats. I'm going to feel good about those formats. And really when the tournament switches to that format, you almost get re-energized. Like, all right, it feels like a fresh start. This is where I need to kill it. And you dive on in. So even if you have kind of a rough start in Modern, after round 3, we will be starting Pioneer rounds. And so, maybe you feel confident in your Pioneer deck and you can kind of use that to reinvigorate your tournament championship run. And, we'll see. We'll see if that's true for any of the players. I, again, haven't taken a look at anybody. We'll see if anybody ends up 0-3. I have to imagine it's possible and maybe even deterministically required, but I'm not a tournament math guy. That's not what I do.
Sure. Yeah, so we are going to grab Nikachu here in just a moment for an interview and talk about how that last match there went. But yeah, I mean, so far, as expected, we have seen a lot of very impressive Magic. I mean, to get to this point, you have to be such a skilled player, and
Mhm.
getting to watch those players pilot these decks that they have such knowledge over is such a treat. As it looks like we are just about ready to go down to Nikachu and talk to him for a bit.
Yeah, I think we can pivot on over. He's ready to go. Says he's ready to go. And Nikachu, talk to me a little bit about the end of that match. What just happened? I want to start there. Obviously, mono blue asymmetrical mirror. We can get into the dynamics of the match here, but the end of the match is where I'm quite confused. So we had this pack to pay for. He couldn't pay for.
Right.
Activated Belcher. We had the ability to return the Belcher to the hand with the sink into stupor, but it looks like we put it to consign. What happened there? What was that dynamic? What was the conversation?
Oh, well, the conversation was at first, my plan was to sink into stupor the Belcher
Okay.
on my turn. And I was reading, do I want to do it on my turn or do I want to do it on his turn? But it looked like sinking on my opponent's turn wasn't going to work. And then when I look back at my hand, because I drew a card off of Svela, and I have consigned to memory. This is just infinitely better. And I knew they had I knew my opponent had Whir of Invention in hand, so they could in theory Whir for a another Lotus Bloom into play. And I was just trying to make sure that like there was no math where they could pay for any of this stuff. So in the end, I passed the turn, they activate, I consign, and they conceded.
I have confusion. I thought the text box on consigned memory is counter target triggered ability or colorless spell.
Oh! Then I concede. No, you're right.
No, you're fine. I mean, you just cast your sink into stupor on your main phase instead, I think.
I just played with this card for the very first time ever.
You're totally fine.
I'm reversing I lost that match. I should have been
Yeah.
I should have played the sink into stupor first. This is the first tournament I'm playing with, what's it called? Consigned to memory. Because it looked like a really, really good card in all the matchups, whether it be for Belcher, for the control matchups. It looks like it's really good for the Brood Scale matchup. No, I'm learning for the first time how. Yeah, I understand. It does not hit activated abilities. It's only the triggered abilities. Okay, I'm going to talk to a judge about this, and I'm just going to make sure it gets reversed. Then technically, I am dead on board. No, we both misunderstood how this card works.
Well, I mean, the onus is on both players. And once again, you had the sink into stupor, and I think that really was going to be good enough. You could just bounce the Belcher. He can't activate, and you actually went to the trigger.
I think we might be having an audio issue.
Are we there?
Okay, no,
Hello?
I hear you again.
Oh,
I hear you again.
Okay, yeah. So again,
then that frustrates me because I had the win anyway.
You had the win. You had the win. I think you're fine to let it play out as is because you stole the line.
You know what? Okay, so you know what happened? My opponent asked me, "Are you thinking about how your consigned to memory works?" Because like first I didn't even think of consigned to memory. I thought about my sink into stupor. So I look at the Char Belcher, how I'm going to play my sink into stupor, and my opponent's asking me, "Oh, are you trying to figure out how? Are you trying to know how to use your consigned to memory?" And I'm like, and then I look back at my hand. I have consigned to memory. I'm like, oh, you're right. This is, maybe this is how I'm supposed to play this thing. So I felt from my opponent's side, oh, this is how this card works. And then anyway, so I pass, consign. They concede. Well, anyway, I'll talk to my opponent about it because I did have the sink, and because in theory, if I don't play consign, I have to play sink, and they can't play around sink. But I'll talk to them to see if who should win this match, because I shouldn't win from the consign, but I should win from the sink. Anyway, I'll give it to my opponent's decision. If they want the win, I have no problem giving them the win.
Sure.
We both had a miscommunication. Oh, I don't hear anything from here. Do we still have an audio issue?
Can you hear me?
Okay, now I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. I don't think there's bad blood. And you, like I said, you both seem to talk about it. I think you had the win anyway. So I think letting it play as it stood works fine. And so, I just wanted to check because there was confusion for us and there's confusion for everybody. And I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, I realized I wasn't confused, but then my opponent gave me the idea to play consigned. That's why we were talking about in between. It's like, oh, you're right. I have this consigned to memory. No, it's not actual stifle. For example.
Yeah. You were Gaslight Gatekept Girl Boss. Now, aside from the end there, what were your thoughts sort of going into the match at large with Merfolk versus this like very explosive combo deck?
So I haven't played a ton of Modern right now, but word on the street from the Merfolk community, this is like an incredibly good matchup because of we have this huge abundance of creatures. We have uncounterable creatures other in the form of Aether Vial and Cavernous Souls. I know I'm not playing with Aether Vial this weekend, but I am playing with the Cavernous Souls. So all their like Flare of Denials, what is that other one? The shoal, the blue shoal.
Disrupting Shoal.
Yeah,
There you go.
disrupting shoal. They don't work. We have a good clock, and we have just a ton of counter magic where it comes Force of Negation, Flare of Denial, Hex Catcher. In some cases, Consign to Memory. Some people play with Chalice of the Void to play on 0 so that it turns off not only the Pact of Negations, but also the Lotus Blooms.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, obviously, aggro plan with some interaction backups should traditionally be quite good against the combo decks, especially in the sideboard. And I noticed the hex catchers in the sideboard. I don't think that was true previously. So I do want to highlight really quick as far as your modern deck goes. Now, I know you played Merfolk in every format. I want to talk about that in a second too. But for your modern deck, typically you see things like Aether Vial, you see hex catchers in the main. It looks like you were very, I'll say, strategic and very intentional about your configuration of the modern deck. Was it just kind of what the community, the Merfolk community, cooked up, or what is your thoughts about what you expected to see in the championship?
Well, I expected to see Energy. And Energy is just a brutal matchup. I mean, frankly, I'm super happy with the entire modern format except Energy. Energy is just bad, or at best, if I bend my deck backwards, maybe I can get 50%. But anyway, super not thrilled about it. But you know what? I playtested a little bit of Violus Merfolk when Modern Horizons 3 came out because it seemed like that was actually our best route to beating Energy. One big problem with Aether Vial, it looks like it should be good in the matchup, but the problem is that it just... let's say they go turn 1 Guide of Souls, and I go turn 1 Vial. Then they go a Johnny make creature attack for a 3/4. I was actually better off maybe just dismembering this Guide of Souls on turn 1 to save myself life, put less board presence on the battlefield. And it's not just Guide of Souls, it's Ragavan, it's Oscillate Pride. So I need to be interacting with the board immediately. Not to mention, Aether Vial sometimes is just like not very useful. It can sometimes get tagged off by what's it called? Static Prison. Another problem is that when you play with Aether Vial, you got to put your land count down. Then that means you don't get your Harbinger of the Seas on curve. You don't get your Tishana's Tidebinder on curve. You don't get your Svelun on curve. And Harbinger of the Seas is amazing versus Energy, and I definitely want to get it out by turn 3. Can win me games on the spot without giving them any chance to catch up. So having 24 lands in the deck helps you move towards that plan. So actually, and I also thought moving my deck up to 4 Cavernous Souls still will be useful versus Murktide, still will be useful versus Charbelcher. So I'm pretty happy with my decision. I found also playing without Vial did help me versus my Broodscale matchup in game 1 because I was more, I had Consigned Memory open on turn 1, whereas instead I'd be constantly put in this decision, do I want to hold up Consigned to Memory when the early game is super important, or do I want to play with Aether Vial? And I'm very happy that I don't have Aether Vial. We can just play with pitch spells, and it gives me more blue cards to pitch to my subtleties and my Force of Negations.
There you have it. I mean, this is like a whole Patreon content post that you got for free on the house on the NRG stream on how to build Merfolk in Modern. And I mean, if there's anybody to talk to, it's going to be you. And you are the Merfolk master. You played it in every format. As I think I don't know how much you were involved in any of the conversations leading up, but everyone was just like, is going to play Merfolk in every format. It's what they expected from you. People knew that coming this tournament they were going to have to play against Merfolk. Did that impact your impact? Did that impact your decision to play Merfolk in every format anyway?
Well, there is a playable Merfolk in Standards. Honestly, I didn't think that my win rate had any chance in like Modern or Pioneer because of Energy is so prevalent. So I was like, whatever, I'll just play Merfolk in every format. I came here because I heard I get a free jacket, I'm going to get a free PETA, and then after that, I'm just going to go back to Canada.
I love the mentality. I love it.
Yeah, well, I think there is something very powerful about being so known for a deck that everyone knows you're going to bring it, and then bringing it anyway and still winning matches. So congratulations.
It's fun. It's more fun like that. It's all about the fun factor. I'm a content creator. You got to make the content. You
Absolutely.
I'm willing to shave 5% off my long-term win rate for that content. It's beautiful.
The branding and for fun gamer here.
Yeah, exactly.
Nikachu able to win. So I believe, like, again, I believe you correctly won that match, and so congratulations to you. We're gonna end up going over here to round 3. So congratulations. We look forward to seeing more of you and your Merfolk strategies in this tournament as it progresses.
Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So yeah, with that, we're gonna wrap up that whole saga, I guess, of the asymmetrical mono blue mirror. We're gonna move over and switch colors to what is a mono green asymmetrical mirror here in Modern. 2 green decks as our backup match. I believe we're going to Game 3 live, and 2 very different strategies from what we've seen at all from any of the players we've watched so far. Got Dominic Harvey, the Amulet Titan Master. You hinted at that a little bit there, Niall, on the left. And on the right, we have Cliff Boyardee on mono green. And this is the Brood Scale Menace. 7 copies in our event. Here's the first of them. Going to get a good look here as they are in Game 3. Exactly how well that deck is performing. Both players here, 1-0. Great starts thus far.
Yeah, I mean, I would count it as a major life achievement if I took a single game off of Dominic Harvey when he's playing Amulet Titan. So if I was Cliff Boyardee right now, I would really feel like a winner. So let's see if they can take a whole match off of Dominic Harvey.
Yeah, Dominic Harvey certainly had a dominant weekend on our series. Came down from Canada as he does, hometown from Toronto. Somebody I've gotten to play with and against quite a bit. He's been around a long time. Very successful Magic player. Won back-to-back events in a showdown weekend, which of course qualifies him for our championship. And that's how he punched his ticket here. Cliff has been in the grind all season long. Finished number 3 on our leaderboard. Something we've seen a lot of. And, to Cliff's credit, some of it has dressed up. I appreciate the, I guess, nod to kind of the fits, not just wearing clothes that are comfortable or whatever. We got full suits, outfits, chef's hats, the whole 9. Cliff gets to look good while doing it and did a lot of winning.
Yeah, Cliff really goes all out for it, as we're going to see for Cliff, a Urza's Saga into a Springleaf Drum. Just a Surveil land for Dominic Harvey here.
Both decks Urza Saga decks, and ironically, kind of both decks looking to do the same thing with it. Using it more for the find a 1-mana artifact mode than really the make constructs beatdown. That's part of the plan. Both these decks can do that. But really, I mean, what you're trying to do here is one deck's trying to find Amulet of Vigor, sometimes Expedition Map, and that's, of course, Dominic Harvey. The other deck looking to find that Blade of the Blood Chief card that allows you to combo alongside the Basking Brood Scale. Combo that did not exist till Modern Horizons 3. The little limited common Basking Brood Scale happens to have text that goes infinite with Blade of the Blood Chief, of course, between switching counters and making 0-1s that allow you to sacrifice them and then put another counter on. Make an infinitely large Basking Brood Scale, and I believe make infinite mana as well.
Yeah, we're going to see Arboreal Grazer, which is going to get us a bounce land, but we're just going to replay our Surveil land. Dominic Harvey, exerting a lot of control over the top of his deck right now.
Yeah, and interesting too. We're bidding tutor targets, right? There's a Vesuva in the yard. That card comes up all the time as far as needing to find it for your amulet combo stuff. You need to copy bounce lands. You need to find a second copy of whatever. Sometimes the gain life land. Sometimes you can do cute stuff with Lotus Field. There's all kinds of little tricks with Vesuva. So with that card kind of out of the mixture, the plan for actually executing amulet should theoretically get easier. But we'll see exactly if that's true. Either way, maybe a slow start. No amulets seen yet. Obviously no Azuzas or anything that really explodes your mana production. And I don't even think there's any Azuzas in Dom's deck at all. So we're kind of looking at what they do, the Aftermath Analysts, Scape Shift, slower development.
Yes, Cliff Boyardee is going to play out a Delighted Halfling, and then the Blade of the Blood Chief you talked about earlier. Use the Springleaf Drum to tap down the Halfling to equip it with the Blade of the Blood Chief. Now, we do know that Dominic Harvey has a Boseiju in hand. We also know that Cliff's Urza Saga is about to go off. So, the timing of executing this Boseiju is certainly very specific. And it looks like some complicated options here for Dom. As it seems like turn over turn, he's looking at high level algebraic equation in his hand.
He does. I love his
Just by reading his
expressions.
face.
Yeah, I love his expressions when playing Magic against him. He looks like he's just in excruciating pain constantly. He's just absolutely mauling you in games of Magic. It's just he just hates to do it to you. But yeah, I mean, I see a collector oof in his hand. That card seems to me really powerful when the matchup comes out of the sideboard as a one of, can find it with summoners packs, has it already naturally in hand. I wonder if this is some of the confidence he has here with not really like needing to jam the combos. He just has this ace level, which he's going to go ahead and deploy. Gets the nod from Cliff. No counter magic here. Seen a lot of blue decks so far. None of that here.
Yeah, very, very interesting here. It looks like we're going to pass back over to Cliff.
It's just like weird mopey beatdowns on both sides. Neither of these players really doing a lot. I don't even think Dom played a land last turn in his lands strategy.
I think he played a Ghost Quarter.
Oh, the Ghost Quarter. You're correct. You're correct. I misspoke. He did Ghost Quarter the Urza Saga, which again, I don't know. Do we need to Ghost Quarter Urza Saga if we have oof? I guess you're scared of the constructs. I mean, I guess you're settle again. Maybe you are scared of the constructs.
And there is the Brood Scale.
Yeah, the combo that no longer works, right? It was we need to equip the Brood Scale. It actually has to be the one with the Blade of the Blood Chief on it. So with the inability to equip, thanks to oof, the combo's shut down. So Cliff does need to find an answer to creatures. Has those Walking Ballistas, Kozilek's commands to name a few. Does need to find them and cast them.
Well, is Walking Ballista an answer to oof?
No, it is not. You are correct. It blocks. That answers it. There you go. You're welcome.
Yeah, maybe Dominic Harvey will make a bad attack.
I don't think Dom Harvey's making a bad attack. But, in a perfect world, he would.
Sure.
Here's his cave.
Spelunking, quite the card.
Okay.
What if your amulet costs 3 mana and let you play an extra land?
I mean, playing an extra land is nice. I don't know if it's going to come up here necessarily. It looks like it will. God, all the weird lands here. This is a weird distribution of lands here for Dom.
I mean, it's an amulet deck, like I don't think you're ever gonna see it and be like, wow, normal distribution of lands.
I mean, sometimes you just got your breeding pools or whatever. You sit at growth chambers, bounce the stuff, do the thing. Here we got all this weird stuff. We got like mirror pools and Urza's caves, and I don't know. Can we even cast a Titan? I think the answer is no. Like,
who knows?
Dom knows. He knows.
Dom knows, and that's why he constantly looks to be in excruciating pain because he is calculating whether or not he can cast Titan at any moment.
Just a constant running total in his head. Now, Dom, I mean, talk about it. He has this, I believe he calls it the Amulet Bible he maintains. A lot of these players here, you talked about format experts, a lot of Patreons around, a lot of people making content for the various decks that they support. Dom, Amulet Titan, is his deck of choice. He has this whole big, just ever living document about his current build of Amulet, all the matchups, like why he picked his certain cards, like kind of this, like I said, this living developmental thing that you can kind of see his development process in. A lot of work to curate, and I think it's on Patreon. I'm not going to plug too much. Dom is a friend of mine, but not going to do too much plugging. But he maintains this whole massive document about this deck, and so I have to imagine any kind of weird distribution of lands, none of it's weird to him. He's seen it all before. He's ready for it all.
Yeah, I mean, Amulet Titan, really a deck that rewards deck mastery and a deck that is impossible to master. So, if you're going to have one, that's a good one to do, as we are getting a counter on the Brood Scale. I think thanks to our land there.
Yeah, you got the Eldrazi Temple, so I believe that lets you pay. I'm gonna quickly check that. Yeah, you can activate abilities with it, so that's quite nice. And that lets you start to lay some beat downs as nothing else is really happening. A 3/3, the biggest thing on the table for the moment. So guess start getting in. Yeah, really awkward draw.
Cliff also getting a second Brood Scale on the board. I mean, honestly, looks like they have like the ideal hand for this deck, and just Dominic Harvey shutting it all down with one little oof.
Yeah, I mean, the House of Cards is currently shut off by the collector, but really, I mean, what that means for Cliff is, I mean, really all you need to do is get that off the table and you should be good. And we're getting a read at Mirror Pool. Let's take a quick look at that one because I believe that complicates the equation. Mirror Pool, I believe you have the ability to make a copy of the collector roof, so you need more than one removal spell is what that means, as long as we're holding it up. So yeah, there we go. Get a look at this one. Adds colorless, copy target instant or sorcery, sure. Or you can, yeah, you go. You can pay 4, and then 1 colorless, tap, sack it, create a token that's a copy of target creature you control. So you can kind of instant speed make another oof in response to the first one as a little trick to stop your opponent from playing Magic longer, needing 2 removal spells. So that is what's complicating
the mana
for
that
bit.
Presently. I think we might be 1 off of it.
Yeah, we are 1 off of it at the moment. And it's weird because you could try to find a land that makes more than 1 mana with the cave, but then you're down your colorless source. So
sure.
I guess Rumble looking to solve the problem.
Yeah, we do have a Malevolent Rumble, which looks like it found an amulet, it found a Lotus Field.
Okay. And you get a creature, which is going to help the whole paying for Mirror Pool problem as well. That gives you your colorless source as well as obviously just a +1 mana. Another big pickup for this deck. People talked a lot about this card. Shockingly to me, people seemed, I don't know, maybe offended is the wrong word. Just like surprised that this card was all that it is. You know, obviously very powerful selection spell that comes with the Scion. Seems pretty innocuous, mostly a limited card, but coming up big. 2 copies here in Dom's deck. And like I said, I remember when that card started showing up a bunch in Modern, people being kind of like, hey, you know, what is this thing? Why? I don't know. It seems, I mean, there's 4 copies in Cliff's deck. There's 6 between these 2 decks. So obviously it's got some power behind it, but I don't know that I would point to this card among the mix as being egregious.
Yeah, I don't think it's egregious at all. I will say, you know, I did not like see the vision with this card at first, and then I played it in Yogg one time, and I was like, "Oh, okay." Immediately bought 4 copies, 4 foil copies online.
4 foil copies. Oh, we're just loaded, rolling in the dough. No, it's interesting you bring up Yogg too, because in my opinion, kind of my vision of the format and how it plays out, this Brutescale deck seems to more or less 1-for-1 replace the Yogg deck. You kind of do the same thing, right? Where you're talking about this creature beatdown thing that, you know, you have this A+B combo that's supported by a bunch of redundancy, but also you just have a fine Moby beatdown plan as the backup, which, you know, maybe it's not fine here, but in general, you can kind of just lay some beatdowns at the brood scales and all that kind of stuff and find victories there. That's kind of the same role that Golgari Yawgmoth was playing in the format. Do you share that?
Yeah, Drake, you've touched on a very sensitive topic for me, which is that decks keep entering Modern that just do Yogg a little bit better. You know, we had Nadu Summer, which it was like, oh, great, Nadu's the best Yogg deck.
Yeah.
And now we've got Broodscale Winter. And, you know, it's not as like egregiously similar to what Yogg is trying to do as Nadu felt. You know, just being like the best Court of Calling deck in the game, but it is close enough that it is, you know, like a little upsetting if you're heavily invested into Yogg.
Apologies, I did not mean to touch on such.
I would still jam Yogg at this tournament.
Okay, all right.
Nikachu and I are of a similar mind on that front.
It's about the fun factor, the branding, the content creation. As Dom looking to create some content of his own has not. Again, neither player really looks to be doing anything of consequence. Like Cliff really struggling to assemble a board that provides a meaningful clock. Dom still at a healthy 16, even as we grow more creatures that are going to struggle to attack past a Boreal Grazer, so big. And Dom still just does not have a Primeval Titan. I mean, he still has that, like I said, the trick with the Mirror Pool. That's what he's holding up his mana for, because if you don't have a Titan to start to end the game now, you know, you could be doing this instead. And I think that's what's going on here. But it really just, for 2 decks that you can kind of think of as having explosive combos, there's really just not a lot of anything happening.
Yeah, and Teleria West was the land for Dom last turn, and the end there, Cliff making the construct. I mean, Cliff is assembling a board, but if he can't deal with the oof, how much does it really matter? Because the more time you give Dom, the less time you have, right? Like that is the power of Amulet, really, is that Dom's gonna have turns where he's gonna be able to just close out the game seemingly out of nowhere.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what he's hiding here too. You mentioned playing the Teleria West. He did not have the ability to transmute it on the previous turn, and just I think he's short blue mana. So now you can do the trick where you float blue, pick it up with a bounce land, which is going to come in on tap thanks to Spelunking, and then transmute it that way. Now I don't know if we were still going to have mana left over to Titan, if that's even what we want to do. Maybe that opens a hole for Cliff to be able to punch in a combo, and you're not going to have anything to do about it. But either way, what you're dealing with here is kind of just this weird holding pattern that currently I would say Cliff is inching his way to ahead. But as you mentioned, really, Amulet out of nowhere could just win the game. Oh, check it out. I have, 2 Amulets or whatever, and now I have 9 Titans, and now you're dead. Or it's just, you die out of nowhere a lot of the time. And that's part of the tension when you're playing against Amulet Titan is really they have just these explosive turns that can come out of nowhere when you talk about a bunch of Amulet effects in one Titan. Now, that's the awkwardness too about Spelunking, though, is the redundant Amulet thing, I think, no longer works under Spelunking because the cards just don't enter tapped anymore. So it doesn't trigger Amulet.
Yeah, as we are seeing Pithing Needle for Cliff here. Now,
I guess it's just the last thing. Yeah, trying to figure out. What are we needling? We could needle the mirror pool. That solves maybe the start of the problem.
Yeah, maybe Cliff has removal and is setting up his ability to actually be able to take care of this creature.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's an artifact that stays in play for your constructs to grow. And, you already have the Blade of the Blood Chief. You already have your Springleaf Drum. So, like, a second Blade of the Blood Chief does cover you a little bit against Spacesian, which we know Don has. He does not know. But also, the Mirror Pool problem is just a problem. So, answering it now, even if you don't have the removal spell, might just be where you want to be no matter what.
Sure.
Could actually just be key. I mean, if Cliff does find the removal spell and is able to kind of punch the whole thing through that way, it'll look really, really impressive. But for the moment, it does look a little suspect, I guess.
Sure. Well, I mean, you do have to get something. And I imagine most of Cliff's artifacts have activated abilities. So maybe it is also just a thing of this is the highest impact I can get on the board right now.
Okay. Yeah. What if you could name Teleria West, right? That works. So that could be a consideration as well if you're worried about that.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea.
Haywire Might. Okay, another artifact with activated ability. Wow, he really just did find all the Urza Saga targets, huh? Actually, all of them.
Yeah.
Awkward.
I mean, that's a lot of artifacts on board for Cliff, right? We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Okay, yeah, these constructs are real. We're starting to lay some real beatdowns. It's not the anemic stuff that we've seen so far. And I mentioned kind of neither deck really looking to do the Urza Saga construct stuff. That is still true, but it is a nice plan B, and that is the power of Urza Saga. That's why people were clamoring for this card to maybe eat a ban before MH3 shook all that stuff up. And now, I mean, you're really seeing kind of more of that power still in action. The more things change, the more they stay the same.
Yeah, I mean, it is a consistent thing we see across like all Urza's Saga decks that aren't, regardless of what their plan A is, we see it in Underworld Breach decks and all sorts of things where just this construct plan B is so consistent and so strong that it's really solid. As we're going to see Cliff activate this other Brood Scale, get a spawn, get a counter. And, they're starting to really set up a board.
Yeah, like you said, I think that really Dom is going to have to start to assemble a Titan. He really had time to just kind of do the oof trick with the mirror pool and do all that stuff. That time is elapsing. And even around Collector Oof, where a lot of Cliff's cards doesn't work, there is a real clock. You are going to have to do something. You can jump block for a little while longer, but you are going to start to have to make decisions. And I think here we're starting to see, based on the picked up Teleria West, we saw him float mana. He's moving very quickly. I think we are looking to do the Teleria West thing that I mentioned before, where you kind of float the blue mana with it and then transmute it that way.
Yes, yeah. That does seem to be exactly what happened.
So now we have a Titan.
We have a Titan. Let's see. Yep, we are transmuting for the Pact.
Yeah. I think that... I mean, a Titan here will be strong, but I don't even know, like, is attacking to a construct even good? We'll see. Well, Tom's going to figure it out. This is the Amulet Titan kind of classic. We're going to spend a bunch of time tutoring, and then either, he figures it out or he does the next best thing, which is whatever it ends up being, an analyst to find. Okay.
Analyst. Oh, this turn is about to get nutty, I think.
Yeah, with spelunking. Oh, boy. I don't know that I've seen this executed on camera thus far. And the cool thing about it, I guess, is there's always kind of a different composition of lands when you do this. So let's see what Dom assembles. I'm excited about this. Analyst.
So we are going to play, which is going to have a mill trigger.
Finds one land. Activate right now.
Activate. Jesus.
Okay. There's Lotus Field among the mix as well. So, we got a bunch of triggers and stuff we need to think about, even with no amulet. We do have a shifting
we have
woodland.
a shifting woodland too.
That's just a check mark, right? Because you can Vesuva, you have to Vesuva something already in play. And then you can make a cave or whatever. And then you have a Lotus Field trigger, and then you have your shifting woodland, which can become analyst again. And then you can sack it, make an analyst. Sack
you can start looping those two together.
So you can start to loop lands. Yeah. And with Cave, I think you can tutor any land in your deck. And then you can pick up. I think basically the way this is going to result is you can pick up every Summoner's Pact with the Teleria West, discarding it, obviously picking it up with the bounce triggers and then discarding it. And then you can find all of your Titans and attack with all your Titans that are, I think, infinitely large, because I think you can loop the pump land as well, assuming there is one. Checking. I don't see a pump land, so I guess there's still just 6/6s. Oh, but you can make infinite Titans. That's what the mirror pool's for. Right. So you can just make infinite copies of Titans that all have haste, and you attack with infinite Titans. This is going to take a long time. This is like classic Aftermath Analyst. You wave your hands around for a while and move your lands between zones. But I believe the end result of this is infinite Primeval Titans, provided he has the mana threshold. This is a lot of mana to do this.
Yeah, I mean, we do have Lotus Field coming in every time.
And it's important because you can sack with the Lotus Field, right? So you can get whatever lands you want in the yard for next time.
Exactly.
So, I think we're going to see this happen. Interesting, too, as Dom is executing this combo, we're kind of seeing this. I got a little update from a trusted source. Dom was actually a big kind of believer in the Brood-Scale deck, was considering playing it himself. He would have been our 8th copy among the modern distribution. Chose to go with Old Faithful at the last minute. Can't say I'm that surprised to see it, but it is worth noting that, he thought it was such a convincingly good choice for this event that he almost played it over his classic Amulet Titan. Now, obviously, he looks good to win this one over Brood-Scale here, so maybe there's a little bit of you made the right choice here, Dom, just playing what you know and playing what you've mastered. But it is worth noting that, as we're kind of talking about Modern and what is Modern going to look like next week, how much is Brood-Scale in the conversation? It's still such a kind of new deck, I guess. It's only been in existence for a few months of Modern's 10-year plus existence. People are still learning a lot about it, and clearly people think it is maybe the best deck in the format, at least the best deck for this event. Something to think about.
As we are going to go ahead and get Primeval Titan with our second pact here. Play the Titan.
Right. So did we use the Shifting Woodland for mana?
For mana,
so that let me read Shifting Woodland. I think you actually don't have to tap it. So that
you don't have to tap it.
Yeah, wow. What a card. And I don't think you have to tap Aftermath Analyst either, huh? Yeah, there you go. Look at Shifting Woodland. A powerful pickup from MH3. 2 copies in Dom's deck here today. Not legendary. Nice little untapped green land. But something to highlight there is that third ability. It becomes a copy target permanent in your graveyard. So this works with your Aftermath Analyst. I believe that is what the hand waving around is. I believe he now has infinite everything. And
and also we have the Beseiju in hand. So we can start looping Beseiju and just you know.
Right, because you can pick it up at the bounce lands each time you
Yeah.
you loop your analyst, pick it up,
Mhm.
discard it, bring it back, and then just start to do that. So yeah, once again, with all these utility lands that are now present in the amulet deck, you now have a deterministic combo with these Aftermath analysts, and that's what he did just explain. I don't know that we did a great job explaining it, but it's kind of hard to explain. So just understand that it involves shifting woodland, repeatedly copying Aftermath analyst, and bringing all the lands, including itself, back. So that is
Right.
a big part of the equation. That's what Dom was able to do, and able to, like you said, over and over again, win out of nowhere. All this stuff Cliff was doing, not quite good enough. So that was game number 3. I mean, it felt like that took forever. You're like, oh, we should be looking at sideboards. No, that was game number 3. Dominic Harvey and his choice of Amulet Titans going to win 2-1 over Cliff Boyardee. So that is the end of round number 2 here of stage 1. One more round of Modern, then we're going to get to the Pioneer rounds. So we're going to be right back. I'm Drake Sazza here with Niall. We'll be back with round number 3 here shortly. Don't go anywhere.